Will the offseason concerns about the Panthers power play end up being an overreaction? We talk about that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, October 1st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You could do that all on Game Time. And whoa, already off to a bad start, already starting the show by saying September instead of October. And to think that yesterday I hyped up the month of October as my favorite sports month with everything going on. And what a day in sports, at least if you're a neutral fan, with the doubleheader for the Mets and Braves. And now today is the first day of the MLB postseason with the wild card round. And also, unfortunately, if you are a fan of the football team in town, everything not going well for the Miami Dolphins, as things are not in a good place for the current state of the team, and the future is in question for them. But there was another game in town for the most competitive team and the team that has more to gain as far as championship success, which is the Florida Panthers. And that's what you came to this podcast to talk about, as the Dolphin season looks to be over with the Panthers season beginning. Nature seems to be healing, but don't get it twisted. I'm just as annoyed about the state of the team as many of you are. So on to hockey conversation here. But the Panthers and Lightning met at Amerant Bank Arena for the Panthers preseason home finale at Amerant Bank Arena, as the Panthers lose to Tampa Bay by a final score of 3-1. And for this one, with the top six mostly being what we're expecting to see, and the bottom six being guys who are fighting for those final roster spots. When I spoke about keys to the game on what to look at versus what to look at for bottom six in the power play, we didn't even get to see power play 2 with Uvis Balinskis manning that unit, because the Panthers didn't get their one and only power play until the final 5 minutes of the game, which we'll talk more about that in segment number 2 here on the show. But for the Panthers and Lightning here, the physicality wasn't really there. You see a lot of conserving energy for the regular season. You see it as the guys who were mostly fighting for the positioning. You see them on the penalty kill, like an AJ Greer diving for the puck to sweep it out of the zone, and then the Panthers going for a shorthanded opportunity when they were on the penalty kill too. But you think about how the game script went for the Panthers here, with until the Lightning got their first goal, not a lot of shot volume for either team. It was the 8th shot of the game when the Lightning got their first goal of it. And, I had to watch the first goal a few times more to see if it was multiple screens. It looked to have been, with one from Asplund at the point, and then one less stride from Uvis Balinskis, and that's a shot block versus a puck getting through Sergei Bobrovsky, which great shot there from the Lightning to get it through, and for Sergei Bobrovsky to get it over the shoulder and past the blocker for him, as the Tampa Bay Lightning made it 1-0 at the time. And also with the second goal for the game that the Panthers gave up, which was Spencer Knight being in the game, which before Spencer Knight came in the game, Bobrovsky finished 10 of 11 on the night, exited with 10:47 left in the second period. But the second one, with Nate Schmidt pinching, Uvis was left all alone. The forwards were deep into the zone right before Gonçalves scored on the POP, pass off the pads. But Honestly, it says -2 for Uvis Balinskis, and this is why the eye test matters for a game like last night between these two teams. And just the as Uvis Balinskis, even though he impressed last season, made the team, nothing is guaranteed for him and in his pursuit and still trying to battle for a roster spot. Given that opportunity on the second power play unit uh, during during practice. The eye test matters for what Uvis Balinskis did in this one, and you see him throwing the hip check on, I believe it was Connor Geeky as they were gaining the zone, and then the Panthers were get up to a quick rush, and also on one of the Panthers PK, not allowing a shot, and then on the one of them for Tampa Bay, not when they got their one and only shot on one of their power plays with 1 second left. Uvis Balinskis is closing the gap, and also with his reach there on I believe it was Jake Gensel there, not allowing a shot there, right, and not committing another penalty for the Panthers there, too, for protecting the net front for him. So the evolution in Uvis's game from what we've seen here, very very responsible with his stick there, and also with what the going back to the roster and bubble guys and getting them and their what they're doing to fight for pucks versus the top six guys who know they're going to make the team. It's so funny on that AJ Greer dive where Aaron Ekblad tried to go for a two-on-one, and Victor Hedman having to be that one defenseman back for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Aaron Ekblad driving it up the ice right before trying to dish it to Patrick Giles. You're not going to see that mostly in a regular season contest between these two teams. I hope we don't see an attempt there if that does come about for the regular season too. But speaking of AJ Greer, congrats to him on getting his degree from BU. Played hockey there, left to junior hockey shortly after, and then returned this summer to get his degree from Boston University. But also the AJ Greer we spoke about. Yeah, we spoke about Jesper Boquist yesterday on just his ability to move up and down the lineup and how many Swiss Army knives for the Florida Panthers that they have with them to just fill in continuously on the spots of guys who possibly get hurt or possibly guys who are resting during this time of year right before the season. AJ Greer was another one who stepped in for Evan Rodrigues, who just after the midway point of the second period was not seen on the ice after, and AJ Greer stepping up on that second line. But Palmers did say that Erod, if this were a regular season game, he would have returned, and he's unlikely to play on Wednesday night when the Florida Panthers do take on the Tampa Bay Lightning from Amalie Arena. From BU to BC, Boston College. It's funny because we mentioned someone from Boston College earlier in the segment, and Patrick Giles on that 2-on-1 with Aaron Ekblad there. Spencer Knight gave up his one and only goal 3 minutes in off the rush, but there was one shot that he looked to have been out of position, that he immediately getting to the butterfly where the Giles line was pinned in their own end. Gergensons had a feed in the low slot, and he was very quick to get to that butterfly position there. And it's crazy. It looked like the positioning of him just being up of when the NHL did not allow the butterfly too. So that's a so for Spencer to get those pads down too, and also the stop that he had on the breakaway that Kucherov had with the reach of the left pad when Gustav Forsling held Kuch and still able to stop a goal from getting in too for him. So Spencer Knight looked very technically sound on the night, and I'm once again expecting for him to make the opening night roster for the Panthers too. And it's just the progression and another year of seasoning in the AHL, even after earning that extension, and a lot of the complaints about the cap implications on a guy being down at the minors. This is why you allow Spencer Knight to. It's like putting ribs in a slow cooker too. You have to let it. You have to be patient and delaying that gratification for what's to come for a guy like Spencer, and to know that that the upside and that the floor is really high for him. I truly really truly impressive how he's conducted himself, at least on the ice in the preseason. Also, a few other shifts that we saw, even though the Panthers had a hard time creating scoring chances and also losing multiple puck battles, that when the puck was deep, you saw those on both the goals. That the thing that both goals had in common was that the Panthers lost battles deep. One in their own offensive end and one in their defensive zone. The one in their offensive end resulting in that 2-on-1 where Nate Schmidt was pinching there too. But also saw a few good shifts of Will Lockwood where he caught Kucherov off guard, backchecked, and as he gained the zone, and the Panthers went the other way. And also the quality scoring chance for him. Unfortunately, still doesn't have his first NHL goal. I know this is preseason, but uh, the pursuit of the puck of Zach Dahl before checking, and then unfortunately not getting the whole his whole stick on it to get a goal there for William Lockwood too. So a few good performance there despite the score for the Florida Panthers too. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss the power play and ask the question: were the offseason concerns about the power play for the Panthers, will it end up being an overreaction? We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you can place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Once again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And you could do that all at FanDuel.com. And once again, I'd like to thank you guys for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday. And it's October. We are 7 days away from opening night. Dmitry Kulikov days away from opening night. And speaking of that and the Panthers and being a Stanley Cup champion, where we are going to see a banner being raised at Emirates Bank Arena, the Stanley Cup championship movie from ESPN Plus is now available. It's been released today. It has been released today, excuse me. Poor grammar on my part. And once I get an opportunity to watch it, we will discuss it here on the show. It's an hour and a half, and I have to sit down and take the time to do it outside of game action and breaking down practices and games. So I'm really excited to see that. So we will bring that to you on the podcast sometime in the next week here. And also, if you didn't get a chance to watch our division preview of the contenders for the Atlantic Division, we did an episode which dropped yesterday between myself, the host of Locked On Lightning, Josh Sperber, Locked On Bruins, and Ian McLaren, and Locked On Leafs host David Morsuti. We had an episode drop yesterday, so if you want to check that out on our roundtable show, you can find that on this podcast feed and on Locked On NHL as well. So the Panthers power play. Let's and when I talk about the concerns of the Panthers power play going from the offseason, when I talk about the concerns that we had, I'm talking about the concerns that I've had it, because I don't want to speak for everyone here in the fan base. I can only speak for myself here. And the Panthers, I mean, getting their and here's the thing about the Panthers power play. They're 8 for 15 so far in the preseason, but it's not a stat I'm truly bragging about, because it hasn't been a full unit for the Panthers on their end of the man advantage, and also every game that they've played, it hasn't been a full NHL lineup on the other end. But hey, still great to see that the puck is finding the back of the net on that part of the ice. But the Panthers scoring on the power play and having their full unit, very encouraging to see. The other one that we saw from the unit, that a similar unit from last night, was game 2 of the doubleheader between the Panthers and the Predators. The only one who was not on that top power play unit for the Panthers there was Matthew Tkachuk, who played in game one. But for the most part, the Panthers really had their mostly their complementary of guys who you expect to be on the man advantage. So Sam Reinhart gets a redirection on the power play. Carter Verhaeghe shoots from on top of the circle, and the Panthers cut it to 2-1, their deficit. So and hey, Paul Maurice was a little daring because it's preseason. You can with pulling the extra attacker, and then unfortunately the Tampa Bay Lightning score and then ice the game there. But however, uh, with this, and one thing that is a concern with on special teams, especially on the penalty kill, has been face-off wins, which the Panthers haven't been necessarily the best at during this preseason in face-offs. There, you're expecting, obviously, expecting Anton Lindell and Eetu Luostarinen to be that top unit on the PK. There, we also have to look at what Patrick Giles, who, yes, we said that he was going to be the fourth line center for the Panthers come opening night, but when you're not having the last change, you're on the road during the regular season, and you're facing off against the opposition. We spoke all about the Kevin Stenley replacement. Yeah, Thomas Noshak is hurt. Kevin Stenley was truly valuable in that end of the ice, especially in the defensive zone. I mean, we've seen it in late game situations for the Panthers too. And obviously, face-off wins are not the be-all end-all. I can just hear the analytics people yelling at me as they're listening to this. But for the Panthers, just that is something to look for too. For as you look at the game logs, and the number for the Panthers in faceoffs are not entirely the best. The only one where you can't see the faceoff percentages is the game that they had against the Tampa Bay Lightning in Orlando, because for neutral site games, not all the stats are recorded correctly, and that's also something that's going on Natural Stat Trick NHL. That for barns that aren't for NHL teams, they don't calculate things as well as the technology that they have in the actual hockey barns too. So that's another thing. But going back to the power play on how important it is for that in establishing your cycle game, and 18 seconds into their power play on Monday night, the Panthers scored. You had three guys up top in Adam Boqvist, Matthew Tkachuk, while you had Barkov and Reinhart down low for the Panthers. I mean, you love to see Barkov also being on that right circle, circling it back up to the point to conduct the power play. But this could be more of what Jamie Compon has up his sleeve on what Barkov could possibly do down low, or maybe they're just trying not to put too much on tape too, for other teams to study, and not opening things up too much on what they're possibly going to do throughout the rest of the season. So this is a great experimentation that the coaching staff is if they are going in this direction too. And just once again, the growth of Verhaeghe going from a guy who hasn't been playing on the power play unit in the first few seasons, and now gradually getting that, and now these last few years on getting more of the responsibilities there. It's very encouraging for him on what he's doing on a guy who could shoot from distance, find the open seams, and also think about the movement for Adam Boqvist, Matthew Tkachuk, and Carter Verhaeghe on that goal. We're expected Adam Boqvist to mostly be right side dominant on that one, but for him carrying the puck, dropping it off to Tkachuk, and moving from point to point while Kachuk's also doing so, and then dropping off to Verhaeghe, getting the penalty killers to bite and go up more in their defensive zone. You're having a seam open up, and then how quickly those close. Verhaeghe finding that seam and then redirecting it to Reinhart. I mean, that was his bread and butter last season. It was either redirections or that triangle play going down low and then back into the bumper for a one-timer to score too. So that is encouraging to see. And also, when we talk about power play concerns of a new quarterback, the thing is that the Panthers, even though if it's not a defenseman, you have multiple guys who are still part of this and who could take uh, quarterback duties, not necessarily always handling the puck on the point, but still working it around, not necessarily walking the blue line, but also battling along the walls too, and in the corners, and also for them and getting it to the net front too. And also with Sam Reinhart's value on the power play on those tip-ins, I mean, even if he doesn't even if he doesn't get to 57 goals from last year, if he averages once again around 35 goals in these next 8 years, the contract is worth it too, especially with what he brings to the table on his two-way play. And I know that fans are already going to be up in arms if he's not nowhere near that 57 goal pace and everything too. And for what they bring there and the speed that Boquist has. Also, Boquist made an incredible play on even at 5-on-5 where puck battled there, trickled to the near the blue line, and then waste no time to get it to Matthew Tkachuk, even though that one was stopped for him. But for the Panthers here, though, knowing that you don't need to change too much for that. That's why you have Boquist there in the first place as a guy who has very similar speed to Montour. Might not they might not have the same shot too, and the same anticipation of a shot for them too, but knowing that the positioning and guys who have conducted it for the Panthers before, who are still on that unit, it begs the question once again of if the concerns will end up being an overreaction. That's just more of me saying it out loud and just wondering, and just something for you guys to consider and to look for as the season progresses. And hey, I know there will be their ebbs and flows on the power play too, but who knows? This could be something that the Panthers could not miss a beat on too. I was confident throughout the entirety of the offseason on their PK, because I know that Kevin Stenlin is a big piece too, but also the maturity in Anton Lundell's game and him rising above there to take more of those minutes. I'm very excited for him, but still with Boquist and being given up by two other franchises. I mean, Gustav Forsling was given up by 3, and he's thrived here too. So you can't doubt what the Florida Panthers can do as far as just reclamation projects once again. And this is why I tweeted on the Locked On account saying I really do have a good feeling that Adam Boquist is going to be a pretty good reclamation project for the Panthers too. And also his brother Jesper, great at guarding the puck. There was one play yesterday where the Lightning closed the gap. He circled around and still got a shot off on Jonas Johansson, even though it was safe. But still, how he's able to just protect it and not getting it checked out of his stick too, for him. And that's really a product of the culture for the Panthers too. And speaking of the culture, this is going to be a good opportunity for us to talk about in segment number 3, just about the state of the culture of the Panthers and just where they stand in the NHL versus what's going on around the league too, and where the Panthers are in the relationship with the fan base and the community after winning the Stanley Cup. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. And the Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save up more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. And the seat views, you get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. And the lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time coverage it's covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And once again, I'd like to thank you guys for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. And just want to warn you guys, if you guys don't get a podcast tomorrow throughout the day, don't you worry. We are going to have an evening edition of Winans Wednesday, a post-game edition of the show after the Florida Panthers game against the Tampa Bay Lightning from Amalie Arena tomorrow at 7 o'clock. As the Panthers will have their second to last preseason game right before heading to Quebec City to face the LA Kings from there. So I want to take this segment and talk a little bit about the culture of the Florida Panthers. I'm mostly, this podcast is mostly focused on the on ice play for the Panthers. We do talk about a little bit of off ice for the Panthers here and there, but I mean, and I want to bring this up because not only do I cover the Panthers, yeah, I do go to a press box from time to time, but at the same time, I am a fan of the team too. And just what makes me feel so good about as a fan of the Panthers, and just when you hear about everything that's going on in the rest of the NHL landscape, which recently I saw a post from Puck Empire of Ilya Lyubushkin when he was traded from the Ducks to the Leafs on the night and day differences of rebuilding teams versus contenders. And whenever there was a video session of his experience in Anaheim, just about the screaming, the when a coach is trying to make players accountable, but the wins are not producing, and it's the same message over and over and over again. And sometimes it could be hard for a rebuilding team to get out of that. And when a coach is coming to you with that fire and intensity, and obviously it's the coach's job to motivate the players and to get them in the best position to succeed. But when Ilya Lyubushkin was talking about just how it would be a while until they talk about truly breaking down the game of hockey, and that he was looking forward to the off season because of all the losing. I know that a lot of Panthers players during their time in Sunrise about 10 years ago, a lot of them were looking forward to the off season because they were just tired of just coming in to the rink and just getting their butts kicked every single night, especially even before that, the Viola ownership, the 2000s Panthers too. You can only imagine how many of them were just waiting and waiting for the season to end for them. And also with everything that's going on, even in another contender in the Boston Bruins on contract situations. I mean, recently for the Panthers and how quickly they were able to get deals with a guy like Sam Reinhart right before the deadline, right before free agency open, because he probably would have lost that extra year on the term for him. With what's going on with Jeremy Swayman in Boston and what's being said out loud to the media and putting out there, kind of similarly to what numbers they are aiming for him to take the crease as the number one. That is something that you don't hear from the Florida Panthers too. And also one play from last night that I pointed at the screen and said, that defines culture for the Florida Panthers. It was one play where the Panthers were on a 4-on-2. The Panthers didn't score, and then you see Matthew Tkachuk just slamming his stick on the ice. A part of me wanted to say, Matthew, it's preseason. What's the big deal? But then another part of me is thinking, you still don't have your full 23-man roster yet. You are speak all about in the offseason about wanting the Stanley Cup again, not wanting that feeling to go away. And also with a lot of eyes on you. It's the little things that speak about culture. Yeah, there's the rinks that have been built around the area. Yeah, there has been autograph signings almost every weekend at maybe like Hollywood Collectibles or somewhere else. and but just something simple like that. And I hope the guys on the bench who saw that, especially the bottom six guys, I hope they really that moment stuck out for them in just trying to and just knowing that if you're in South Florida, you're expected to compete, that you take no shifts off, that that the expectation is always to win every night for this team. And that is just the changing of the guard of why once again that trade for Jonathan Huberdeau was worth it. And even Steve Goldstein brought it up in the broadcast about asking Bill Zito about the risk of bringing in Kachuk with that trade. And then Steve Goldstein recently said on the broadcast saying, if you knew the information that we had, you knew that it wasn't much of a risk. And I just laugh a little bit too. And it's just you love that passion from a general manager. And once again, the whole wanting it more is just flat out not lip service for these guys, as these guys are still, the majority of the guys are in their mid to late 20s at their prime. It just goes to show how much of an environment is that it's business for these guys. It's business as usual. Come in, do your job, say yes sir, no sir to the coaching staff, and also for the coaching staff, for them being players coaches too, like someone like Paul Maurice. Not a guy who's going to call out his players publicly, and especially because Paul Maurice, that interview that he did with Katie Engelson during the final, of his relationship with the media too. And even if someone asks a horrible question, he's not gonna call him out or give him an attitude. Obviously, with his son being a broadcaster, and I've had the pleasure of interviewing him too. But also, that is another thing for the Panthers, and just the change here, and how they are going to keep things close to the vest. And as media members, we wish that we had more of what was inside, as far as what they're thinking, as far as who they're looking for in trades and everything. But that close to the vest mentality that Bill Zito has is actually truly helpful for their them eliminating distractions, if you really truly think about it. So there's pros and cons to it, as a person of the media too here. But you could also look at it and appreciate it too with it. And also with the Panthers and the culture, and also just the growth of it. The fact, once again, with them having their own games on local TV, their own app, which I didn't really talk too much about the app. The app is great. It has a countdown to when the broadcast is starting too, when you click on it. And I know Vinny Viola is swimming in a pool right now with how much his net worth has gone up too. The only flaw of watching games on demand, which I did for Friday's game against Carolina, I watched it on Sunday. The only flaw is the no commercials in between that, and Bally skipping through those commercials when you watch it on demand. But that's neither here nor there. And also, by the way, I found out that Court TV is back, which I thought it was gone once it was changed to True TV. But hey, too, that that is another thing there. But also, speaking of that, and also with how friendly they are to their season ticket holders too, um, and how they relate to the fan base too, with it being economical to go to a game too. Although their concession prices are higher than most teams, food is nourishment is essential. But I'm talking more of a personally now here. I'm okay with eating before a game and then paying for my ticket, and and that versus an expensive ticket and cheap concession prices, and that adds up for me personally more than what I would do if I were to pay for a more expensive ticket and the concessions. With the Panthers structure and how they do it with fans. That is more suitable, at least in my situation. I know everyone's is different too. Some people are coming to the rink after their job, after maybe dropping off their kids at home from picking up from after school care, after they come out from work, and then having to go to the arena, or picking up their kids from school and then going straight to the arena, or something like that, or even going to a game in their suit and tie corporate guy apparel because they can't change prior to the game too. So it give those, that in itself, with the prices of a ticket versus the other markets. I'm mostly talking about what Utah Hockey Club has recently released as far as their concession prices, like $3 waters and $2 hot dogs and everything. And it just goes to show culture of South Florida hockey on and off the ice too. And I know the arena is not owned by the Panthers, it's owned by the county, but still, that in itself gives the Panthers more opportunities to fill their barn and still keep themselves in the top 12 of attendance, because the Panthers were in that last season. Yes, the Florida Panthers were in the top third of the NHL in attendance last year. And that, along with the winning, is a product more about the hard work that the Viola family has done. And for that, they deserve so much kudos after everything, that all the noise that we've seen around the league. And you look at the Panthers, really, really good spot. But thank you guys all for listening to this segment here on the show, and also for us breaking down this 3-1 loss for the Florida Panthers against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Once again, tomorrow's edition of the show will be a late evening edition of the show, as we will be breaking down the Panthers and Lightning from Amalie Arena, as the Panthers will have their second to last preseason game. And then before you know it, puck drop on October 8th from Amerant Bank Arena against the Boston Bruins. It'll be a fun one, as the Panthers will raise their Stanley Cup banner. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.